Alright, so today I'm gonna make a video talking about fusing your finale strings, but this can also be substituted as a string for a show as well. All you have to do is substitute your bridge fuse, which is we're gonna use this quick firecracker fuse, which burns at 0.1 second per foot, so a tenth of a second per foot. You substitute this with regular visco and you can have a regular show string. So what you're going to need is some sort of fast fuse, masking tape as thin as possible, your shells of course, cotton string, 1 pound load works the best I've found. It's pretty thin. A knife, I use knives over scissors just because it makes me feel safer. Just because scissors, 2 pieces of metal, scraping, I don't know if it's possible to make a spark, but always use a knife to cut stuff. These work good because they don't actually touch for cutting fuse, they just kind of brush each other, so I use those to cut fuse. You're going to need visco anyway, small piece, like 2-3 inches, and your shells of course, that's about it. So first you get your shells. Today we're making strings of 5 shells, so I have my shells I picked out. First thing I do is I load them in the order. When you're doing this, make sure you find a rack that's gonna be the one you're launching out of or similar, or at least longer. This is either gonna be the rack I'm gonna launch out of, or a rack with the same tubes, just no spacers. So I can use this rack because if there aren't any spacers, then it won't matter, because the bridge fuse will just kind of lump a little bit. So it's either got to be bigger, the space between your tubes either has to be larger or the same. It can't be smaller because then your shells won't fit. But you just kind of want to figure out, these are pretty much all the same. I have 4 ball shells and I think, yeah, 4 ball shells and 1 can shell. So I just kind of put the can shell in the middle. That's really the only thing you'd have to figure out. If you have like double breaks, you probably want to put your larger breaks towards the end of your finale. Makes more sense. So then the first thing you want to do is take whatever you're using to cut, and right at the end of the fuse, you just want to take it and you just want to slice it off 45-degree angle. Alright, so you get like that little angled cut. I don't know if you guys can see that. You're just kind of putting it in, cutting the tip off. Put it in. It doesn't really even have to be at a 45. It can be straight if you want, but 45 seems to expose the most area of black powder. So this is an easy step. Takes a couple seconds. Just one down here. Alright, that's what you gotta do. Next thing, you take your bridge fuse, whether it be visco for a show or finale a fast fuse, and you want to extend it the length of your 5 tubes to the end of the tube you want it for here, and on the front of your tube you want it 2 inches over. So you pull it tight to the end of the tube here, and the front of your tube you want it 2 inches, give or take, over. Mark it with your hand, you're just going to cut it. And you have your bridge fuse. Okay, so you set that down. Next thing, you want to rip a couple pieces of tape. Whatever the number of shells you have, plus 1 is the pieces of tape you need. So we have 5 shells, so I ripped 6 pieces of tape, about 1.5 to 2 inches long. Can be smaller. Alright. The next thing you got to do is get your 1-pound string. And again, you want whatever the number of shells you have, plus 1 you want to cut pieces. Your string pieces should be, what I usually do is I just cut 1 piece off about 2 or 3 feet long, and then from there I cut that into smaller pieces. It's just easier to work with. Some of the guys, the veterans that work with Firework, you'll see they already have hundreds of pieces of string cut out into like a tassel looking thing, and they have 1 piece of string tied around it in the center. Kind of makes like a braid, and you can just pull pieces out. You'll see them walk around and have it in their hand like this. But I usually don't do my stuff in the field. I usually do everything beforehand. So you're going to cut it into about 4 inches, give or take, pieces of string. The longer, the easier to work with, I think. So 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 6. Alright, so now that we have all of that done, take all your pieces of string, and again I said like they'll walk around, they'll have like a tassel like this with a piece of string tied around the center, so they just kind of slide out. It's pretty cool. I usually make one when I'm going to set up just in case you need the string, but I usually do all my stuff beforehand like I just said. Alright, so the first step into making a really strong finale line is taping. Some guys will only tape, but what I like to do is tape and tie. And I'll explain the difference right now. Taping is good when you're on the scene. It's quick, it's easy, and it's very secure because it does two things. It holds the fuse to the bridge fuse, it holds the lead fuse to the bridge fuse, and it makes a fire tunnel, what I like to call. What it does is it kind of encloses the area where the fire is coming off the bridge fuse. It kind of keeps it in there and concentrates it onto the next fuse and ensures a light. Instead of having it spread all over the place, it concentrates the same amount of fire and heat into that small little tunnel. So that helps it light. So what I like to use the tape for is for a fire tunnel only, not so much to hold it on. That's what I use my string for, but it does do both tests. Another thing is the tape kind of over time, because of humidity, moisture in the air, it kind of loosens up and it can just slide apart. So if you're doing your finale strings beforehand, before your show, I recommend you tape or zip tie. You tie or zip tie your strings as well, because over time your tape's going to kind of loosen up the adhesive, and your fuses, when you go to pick up your string, are just going to slide out. So what I like to do is take my first shell lead and take my bridge fuse, and you're going to have 2 inches, about 2 inches sticking out of the bridge fuse, and you're going to start your thing. You're going to put your 45 cut facing the fuse like that. And you're going to take your tape and you're going to put it on just like that, and you're going to have a little bit of the tape sticking over so you can't see the visco anymore. You're going to fold it over like that, and you're just going to wrap it around just like that. And all you want taped is about the width of the tape, like that. You don't want to like wrap it around and spiral, go down all the way. Just want about the width of the tape, which is about 1 inch. And then that little end piece that you left hanging over, you just squeeze it down. Just make sure it kind of makes like that funnel shape. So you have it hanging over. You drop it down. Make sure this one's going to be a little shallow. You want to kind of make sure that you hit the bottom. You hear it, but it's kind of pulling it in. So this fuse must have been a little bit short. A little bit of error on the quality control in China. Not too big of a deal though. This is okay with this visco fuse because after it burns, there's nothing left. It just burns completely. So even if your shell's up here, once it burns, it's going to drop and then it'll go up. But only take that risk if you know your shells slide very well. If you need a drumstick or a dowel to push your shells in, don't do that, because sometimes that fuse will burn and it won't drop. It'll just hang there, and then the lift charge will detonate and it'll go that high, and then you'll have a pretty big problem on your hands. Another thing is, if you're using this fuse as your leads, after it burns, it leaves string. The string doesn't completely burn. So if you have your shells hanging and it goes, it's just still going to hang because it leaves string there. It doesn't completely burn through, and then it'll lift about that high and you'll have a problem. Alright, so now you move on. You want to keep it about centered, 45 to your fuse, halfway over just like that, all the way around. Really well. You're making that fire tunnel, so you want it to have thick walls so it doesn't just completely burn through. Then you're going to pinch the ends like that, just so it kind of holds it on, just like that. See, now this fuse is longer, hits the bottom. Alright, next thing, you just keep moving down the line. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back.